Okay, here's the deal. So chapter 1150 of One Piece has dropped, huge milestone. Now I already recorded a chapter review for 1149 before 1150 came out, but I had a very busy week, didn't have a chance to really edit it, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna double up today. Gonna begin playing the chapter review for 1149 that I already recorded before 1150 came out. We're just gonna play that as it is, and then we're gonna cut back to the present, back to the now, and I'm gonna talk about 1150 for a little bit. Okay, so without further ado, we're gonna go back to the past for my thoughts on 1149 in 3, 2, 1. When it comes to Brook, I feel like it's damn near guaranteed that we are going to get a whole other flashback about Brook's early life. Mark my words, we are going to see what this funky skeleton man was doing back in the day when he was just a funky man. In the latest chapter of One Piece, Oda has dropped what is potentially one of the biggest bombshells of the series. And of course, this chapter came out the very same weekend that I was attending a music festival, and thus unable to read the chapter, let alone make a video on it, until some serious rest and recuperation had occurred. So yes, this video will be coming out a little later than most of the videos that you've probably already seen, but here it is. I don't always make a review for every chapter, but it is very important that I make one for this chapter, because call me Madam Charlene, because I goddamn called it. In my very latest video before this one, I made a whole video all about Brook and the potential history that we haven't learnt about him yet, and I said that we are probably going to learn about it. It felt like there were hints building up towards that. Lo and behold, chapter 1149 ends with this. Well, it doesn't quite end with this. This is the second last thing we see, but we'll get to the very last thing in a little bit. So this seems to be where we're getting Brook's past. I said we'd get it eventually. I didn't think we'd get it literally right away. And this panel very much seems to imply to me that Gunko is Brook's daughter. That, based on the information that's being presented to us, that seems like the most clear-cut conclusion to draw here. Now, all we see at the moment is this silhouette of presumably Brook and a very young Gunko hanging out, and Brook saying that it was always his dream to be a pirate. Again, presumably Brook is saying that. It does make sense considering he became a pirate. Now, it is not outright confirmed that Brook is Gunko's dad at this second, at the time of this recording at least. It's possible that Brook was more of like a very well-loved guardian rather than a biological or even a what's the word? Or even a foster parent. It could have been like a Pell Vivi situation where it's like a guardian who is still very, very loved and there's still love and affection there, but it's more of an avuncular relationship. You know, maybe Brook was like an uncle to her. I've seen a theory going around that Gunko is Calico Yorkie's daughter, and so Brook was like a godfather to her. There's a lot of good like points in that theory that I can see definitely lining up. But all of that, there's a few extra steps to getting to that before we sort of start taking that as gospel. For the moment, what it seems like we're being told is that Gunko is Brook's daughter, so I'm happy to just ride the wave of that assumption until we are told or shown otherwise. And I gotta say, this really threw me for a loop. I was not expecting this at all. Even in the whole video I made all about the things that might have happened in Brook's past, it didn't even occur to me that Brook might have had a family of its own. Like, I speculated a little bit about like Brook's parents and his family when he was growing up. Never even crossed my mind that it could be a possibility that Brook had his own family, his own wife, his own daughter, or indeed more than one child. Maybe he had a few children. Who knows what was going on? I suppose in the back of my mind, I would have thought that if that was the case, then Brook would have brought that up at some point, like maybe when he was sharing his life story with Robin and Frankie back on Thriller Bark. Could have told them, by the way, as well as this whole thing with the whale, I also have a family who I left behind and who are almost certainly dead now. The assumption that we have to make is that at some point Gunko was abducted and mind-wiped, or mind-wiped and then abducted, comes to the same thing, by Imu or someone else from the world government, maybe one of the elders, maybe one of the holy knights, to be brought among their ranks as possibly an unwilling or a manipulated or controlled part of that faction. There definitely does seem to be some very close connection with Gunko and Imo specifically. Again, we will get to that. A lot going on in this chapter, but definitely the last two revelations put everything else, like, who cares about that? This is the focus. So the world government could have erased Gunko's memory by some means, possibly the former user of Pudding's power. In addition, going back to why Brook wouldn't have brought this up before, more than just like his 50 years of isolation and going a little bit loopy in the old noggin there, is that maybe he was mind-wiped too. Before joining the Rumbar Pirates, maybe, you know, the world government raided Brook's home and raided his family, mind-wiped everyone, so that's why Brook set out to sea and hasn't brought up his family, because he's forgotten them. Because we see that he thinks Gunko is familiar, but he can't quite place his finger on what it is. And then we see in this second last page, Gunko has that similar kind of reaction. We know she's already a fan of Soul King. Maybe it's not just the music of Soul King, maybe somewhere in the back of her head there was some feeling there, some instinct that she had a connection to Brook. And hearing this child on ELBAPH calling for their dad, it's Colin who's calling for his dad. Hearing Colin yell for his dad makes her think of herself yelling for her dad back when she was young. So something happened there. I'm just absolutely floored. I did not see this at all being the direction this was going. In addition, something very significant about this, right? This isn't my idea, I've just seen speculation about this elsewhere on the internet, but this could be a build-up to a reveal that Brook's recurring "can I see your panties" joke actually has some deeper meaning. The theory goes that maybe Gunko had a particular pair of panties that she liked, and subconsciously Brook has been trying to find her through this convoluted method. Which is a very silly theory, but also I could absolutely see that being the kind of thing, the kind of stunt that Oda would pull. Which would be wild, because I gotta say, the panty joke's not one of my favourite recurring jokes in the series. I think it's very overplayed. That being said, if it turns out the entire time it was building up to the reveal that not only Brook had a daughter, but Brook's daughter is being forced to work directly for Emu in some capacity, that would be insane. That would be a reveal, a moment in One Piece on the level of the Gear 5th Awakening. I'll say it. I've said it. I've said it now. I can't take it back. So 100%, that was my highlight of this chapter. So that was the highlight of the chapter, but also there was some other like really good stuff in the chapter as well. Going back a bit, we had Scopper versus Summers. Scopper Gaban, man that you are. That was an incredible fight, incredible to see the left wing of the Pirate King, even way past his prime, just cleaning up. And presumably killing Summers. Like, Summers putting up a decent fight with his thorn attacks. But, you know, we saw Scopper chop off his hand, and it wasn't healing for however Scopper managed to do that. And then we see Scopper in this chapter slice him up hamburger style. Presumably, he also can't heal from that, and I would have to assume that means that Saint Summers is now dead. I mean, can you have a character being cut in half like that and still being alive after? That would be ridiculous. I mean, come on. That would be absolutely ridiculous. That wouldn't happen. So just incredible to see such a badass moment from Scopper Gaban, immediately to be followed with the gut punch of him getting there almost ready to save the kids, to save the library, to save the day, but seeing the future sight that is like, if I keep going, Gunko is actually going to kill Colin. I cannot let that happen. I love my son more than anything, and he has to surrender and give up, and it's just... oh, it is brutal. Although it has been well established by now on the channel that the more emotionally devastating a moment in One Piece it is, the higher I tend to rank it as a moment in the series. Like, man, that made me cry my eyes out. I love it. And you know, that trend is continuing because this has been such a phenomenal chapter. And speaking of this chapter and its phenomenality... that is not a word. Not only do we get all of that, we get all of those emotional gut punches with Ronya, with Scopper and Colin. Not only do we get the sheer, like, badassery of Scopper Gaban, not only do we get the implied revelation that Gunko is Brook's daughter, which still blowing my mind. Not only do we get all of that, but we also get the very last panel of this chapter. Emu himself is coming in to join the fray on ELBAPH. What seems to be happening is Emu has some kind of special connection with Gunko specifically, and is able to take over her body, and has now done so, and is going to start really wrecking stuff. And I gotta say, this, more than anything we've seen so far in either Egghead or ELBAPH, this is really earning this, like, this bit of the story. Like, it's living up to the name Final Saga, right? This is like, oh, we are in the endgame now. It has just got real. I was certainly not expecting to be facing Emu this soon, even if it's like not exactly fully Emu, it's like Emu possessing Gunko, which might be not Emu at his full powers. But yeah, one of my concerns for the final saga, I suppose, is like the power ceiling of it all, because we've already faced the 5 elders. Granted, we didn't win against them, we had to run away from them. And now we're already facing a version of Emu, so it's like, where's it all gonna go from here, you know? To be facing Emu this soon in the final saga is really like, oh, we're not holding back anymore, right? And along with this absolute banger of a cliffhanger comes a little more insight into Marijois. Speaking of that, Emu says the Holy Land is in chaos, it is burning right now, so something's happening over there, and he is not happy with whatever's going on in ELBAPH. That's why he's making the huge decision to actually step in himself, something that we've only seen him do once or twice so far, stepping in to kill Cobra and stepping in to order the destruction of Lelouchia. I think that's the only 2 times we've seen him like actively take a big step. Although that should really only be 1 step, because Lelouchia? Never heard of it. Having said all that about like my concerns about the power ceiling being too high right now, it actually makes perfect sense thinking about it for Emu to turn up on ELBAPH, because so far one of the huge themes that we've been seeing is like people portraying themselves as gods, or in particular as false gods. In the very beginning, Road was playing at being the sun god Nika with his little Lego world situation. Loki claims to be the sun god when Luffy first meets him. Luffy is perceived by many to be the sun god. The Holy Knights and the Celestial Dragons, they all view themselves as gods, and there are none who view themselves as an ultimate god more so than Emu himself. Like, that's the epitome of a false god, right? I mean, Enel wishes. In addition, we've got the top layer of ELBAPH as well, the, what's it called? The astral plane, or the heavenly plane, I forget. So, like, this whole godhood aspect is really, like, central to ELBAPH. So having Emu step in here, it makes sense. It also makes sense now why the Monster Trio and the New Giant Pirates and Loki are being sidelined in the lower realm right now, because they're ideally the ones that you want to have up on the middle layer during this situation, but nope, they're not here right now. The rest of the crew are gonna have to like tackle this on their own for the time being. So yeah, sorry, this was a bit of a rambly one. I don't really have a script for this. I just was very excited about this chapter and wanted to talk about it. I don't make a chapter review for every single chapter, but usually only when something super significant happens, and mate, this felt pretty bloody significant. So yeah, that's my thoughts on chapter 1149 of One Piece. Roll on chapter 1150. Whoa, those were some insightful thoughts. Alright, we're back in the present now. Fitting format for this arc of ELBAPH in One Piece, because time dilation may well be a theory that is coming true. Based on what Emu says, like Emu's like, what's taking so long, that does seem to imply that there's a little bit of funny time shenaniganry in ELBAPH itself. Could it be that in the like single day that we've been on ELBAPH in the chapters we've been reading, in the outside world, outside of ELBAPH, time has been moving at a different rate, and that is why Emu's gotten so impatient and taken action now. Like, it makes sense for Emu to be a bit impatient, that seems to fit with his character, or their character rather, but also, dude's like 800 years old, like, he picks now to be impatient. So time moving faster on the outside world, that does seem like it could, that's got a very strong possibility of actually being a theory that comes true, I think. 1150, by the way, huge milestone. I already said this in the 1149, but we are now halfway through the 1100s. This is big. So, last chapter I was all going on about the Gunko and Brook connection that seems to be hinted at, that it seems we've got to get that story some point soon, I hope. I'm dying to know what is going on there. However, there was no real expansion of that in this chapter, and fair enough, because Gunko is pretty preoccupied being possessed by the main antagonist of the entire series. Emu has taken action. Emu is literally a devil, like the wings and the tail and everything, like full-on cartoon devil, full-on what's-his-face from Disenchantment. And I will reiterate my belief that because this is Emu possessing Gunko rather than Emu himself, I do think this is still a weakened version of Emu that we are seeing at play here. I still think this is not Emu at his full power, and that is saying something, because Emu Gunko It's pretty damn powerful. We need some kind of catchy nickname for the Emu as Gunko. Emo, why not? Wearing the right shirt for that, aren't I? What would the other option be? Gunku? Yeah, no, let's go with emo. It really wasn't a face. What was I saying? Oh yes, and that alone, that this being not Emu at his full power is saying something because, yeah, pretty damn powerful. Like, it seems like they can summon just a grimoire of endless items that they can fish out into thin air. We thought that Killingham's dream power was powerful, but no. Gunko just pulls out an actual gun and shoots Dory and Broggy. Dory and Broggy, they get corrupted. They get turned into evil Dory and Broggy. This is terrible. This is terrible news. These are the first giants we ever met. We have such a strong connection with them. We know how powerful these guys are as well. So for them to be corrupted and turned evil by this power, that's pretty bad. Everything has just suddenly gone from 0 to 100 in this last chapter. It is insane what's going on. The library is burning, the children are still hostage, half of the Straw Hats are still held hostage, and Emo is taking over everything. Wait a minute. Gunko Emu. Gummo no pistol. Is there something there? She pulled out a pistol, well, not a pistol, she pulled out a bloody shotgun, didn't she? Basically, this seems like ELBAPH's darkest moment. I didn't know how long this arc is gonna be, none of us do, but it seems like this is really the dark night of ELBAPH. Everything's gone wrong. We really need to start, sorting this out. We've got Dory and Broggy and a whole host of other corrupted giants now as part of Emu's army, as well as the nightmare creatures, which we found out in this chapter are just constantly respawning. No matter how many times the giants knock them down, another one pops out. That kid's mum, there's no stopping her. Also worth noting is that the corrupted giants, they get horns after being corrupted and flipped into their dark reflection selves. And I will say I saw someone else speculating about this. This isn't my idea, but the speculation goes that this could be an origin story for how the Oni exists in One Piece. We are pretty sure that Harold had some connection with the world government, if not Emu himself, and we know that King Harold had very strong opinions on the Oni heritage and all of that, ripping his horns clean out of his head. So, there could be something there. This could be how the Oni got brought into existence. They were corrupted giants the whole time. Emo's power as well, bringing things out of the book, that feels very similar to Luffy's cartoony Looney Tunes power, where he can bring out a hammer or a baseball bat or whatever he wants from his, he gets a cartoony pocket dimension that he has. So I'm really interested to see Luffy go up against this corrupted Gunko and see how those two interplay with each other. The endless potential of cartoon power versus the endless potential of demonic power. I mean, whatever happens, Luffy and company have to get involved soon, right? I mean, Luffy and the Lazy Bones gang, they've just been down there on the lower rung of ELBAPH, chilling this entire time. I don't know what's going on up there. But we do know that both Scopa and Chopper have fallen down off of the middle realm into the lower realm. So it would not surprise me if we cut back to the Lazy Bones gang, and that's what I'm calling them, by the way. The Lazy Bones gang feels fitting considering they've just been sidelined for most of what's gone on so far. So I reckon maybe in the next chapter or one of the upcoming chapters, both Scopa and Chopper are going to fall directly into the middle of the monster trio and the new giant pirates and Loki, and they'll be like, what are you guys doing down here? Things have gone south. We need you to take action. You're an emperor of the sea. We need Loki. We'll take Loki. The situation requires that we put our prejudice against Loki aside. Loki, come on, you gotta help us beat the Holy Knights and Emu and all that. So the gang down there, they're gonna be the heroes. They're gonna show up and save the day. That is what I'm thinking might happen. That's what I'm hoping might happen. Although I do hope that it's not too easy of a save. It would feel to me a little cheap if that lot just turned up and then suddenly everything's alright. I feel like we need that lot to turn up and get up there and be okay, we're a little less on the back foot now, but we are still really pressed here. This is still dire. Because I have to wonder how much of ELBAPH is even left if the situation has gotten this serious. But it still feels like we have quite a few things to wrap up in terms of things that have been set up, what went on with Loki and Harold and Jarl in the castle, what went on with Brook and Gunko. I mean, I guess those are the only things, but still, that's 2 flashbacks, and we know that Oda likes a good chunky flashback, so maybe that will fill out the chapter count a little bit more for the ELBAPH arc. Doesn't feel like out of the question for the next arc to be in Marijois. Like Imu said, Marijois is on fire, everything's like gone to hell. Ironic thing for Imu to be saying, but there you go, he said it. And they were going to kidnap the children and take them to Marijois anyway, so it could be, you know, ELBAPH has a bad ending. We lose in ELBAPH and we have to follow the Holy Knights and Imu back to Marijois to like see what's going on there, and then that's like a big fight's gonna go down in the Holy Land. Like possibly. That's very much speculation. Like I don't know how necessarily strong the possibility of that happening is, but it feels like it could happen. Very much we're in the endgame, not just of only ELBAPH, but of One Piece itself. Like, the stakes just keep on getting higher. Everything is chaos, everything is a disaster, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Okay, so again, that was all very rambly, but that's my thoughts, that's my immediate reaction to chapter 1150. Let that sink in for a minute. 1,150 chapters. Wow. Now once more, I just want to reiterate, I won't do a chapter review for every single chapter, like only if something really big happens, such as this. Most of the videos I want to make are going to be more like general videos about the series, just because the pressure of keeping up with every chapter as it comes out is a little much for me. I don't have quite the bandwidth to do that. In addition, just something to bear in mind vis-a-vis the comment section is I am only reading the official translations when they come out, so do bear that in mind and respect that. Vis-a-vis talking about what happens in the next chapters in the comments section. But, you know, speaking of the comment section, let me know your thoughts on chapter 1149 and chapter 1150 down there. Where do you think we're going to go from here? What do you think is going on with Imu's power, with Gunko? There seems to be like a really specific connection between those two. I almost wonder if Imu like singled out Gunko to be this like the person that Imu can inhabit, this vestige of Imu, as some kind of vindictive move, like in the same way that Saturn singled out Kuma and Ginny and Bonnie and like just decided to make their lives hell. Maybe this is like a real Imu just being a prick, being like, you specifically, you and Broken and this family, I'm gonna just absolutely destroy your happiness and make you be the person that I can possess and walk on the earth with. Could be going on. But yes, let me know, what do you think of these 2 chapters? What do you think is gonna happen? What do you think of everything that's happened so far? Will ELBAPH have a bad ending or a good ending? Will we go to Marijois next? And when, oh when, is the main character of this series actually gonna take some goddamn action here? Will it be next chapter, or will he still be having a picnic for a little bit down there? Whatever your thoughts, pop them below, let me know, and let's all just talk and nerd out about One Piece down there together. Do remember to like this video if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and as always, I will see you in my next one.